Hey, welcome back to the channel. I was just enjoying my nice rock garden. But a lot of times, for us fencers, all it means is problems. And one of the questions we get a lot on this channel is, can I drive in this soil type or this soil type? Well, we can't answer all your questions because it's so area specific. What we're gonna do is we're gonna show you a worst case scenario for us, and we're gonna show you what it takes to pound posts because it can be done. It's usually just a matter of cost. And then what it looks like when they're not pounded well enough. This is what we're dealing with. As you can see, we have rocks galore. We had a bumper crop this year. This is all it is sand and rock. Almost no soil here whatsoever. So we're gonna go right over here where it's the same exact ground, and we're gonna try and pound some posts and show you what it looks like when it's not good enough. So many rocks. We're gonna start off with the Multi-Pro XA and we're gonna see how deep we can drive it. I don't think it's gonna get the job done because I know exactly what's down here. Then when that doesn't work, we're gonna move to the hydraulic pounder from Rhino. We're gonna try that. Our goal is to try and get it at least 3 feet. If that can't get it deep enough, then we'll go get the heavy weights. See what we can do. We will eventually get a post deep enough. Now, I don't want you thinking that we cherry pick some spot. I'm gonna throw this over my shoulder and that's exactly where we're gonna drive it. There you go. Okay, that's where you're pounding it.
Isn't that right where the gas line is?
That's where the fiber optic is. Our target depth is a minimum of 3 feet. The first goal is to try and get it down. You gotta be by the rock. It's in there, man, that thing's in there a good solid foot. That passes Florida standards.
Feel it
Pop
move.
that thing off. Well, yesterday we got rained out, and Wyoming has been so gracious to me that they wanted to remind me why I left Wyoming. So not only is it probably one of the coldest days that we've had yet this year, but we're also getting that nice breeze. Yay. Yay.
That feels amazing on my ears.
Yeah, and Dan thinks he's gonna make it all day in this hoodie, and I'm like,
I really
no
do.
way.
I really think I'm gonna make it all day. I got my True Work pants on.
I've got my parka, my winter parka. My hands are already a little bit cold. I have underoos on under here, long underwear. This is like, I'm not built for this. Anyhow, to get back to the task at hand, he was able to drive this post just a little bit over a foot.
I think we said 14 inches.
As an example of a post that is not in there well enough, this would be a prime example. This is failure. So when I can see it and I can pull on it like that and the ground gives way, this is not good. This is not what you want to see. When I pull on this, I should not be able to see those large cavities. And then obviously right back out of the ground. I need to be able to shake this thing and not have that ground fall away from the post. So that would be an example of a failure. And it doesn't matter if your post is 3 feet in the ground and you get that, or if it's a foot in the ground, it's not good enough. We're gonna put this pounder on now, the Rhino hydraulic pounder, and we're gonna see if we can get some more power out of that and get this post to a proper depth. And if we can't, we're gonna put that on it and then see, because it's not if we can get the post in the ground, it's how much does it take. There's always a cost benefit analysis going on here, so.
Also, when you introduce heavier equipment, you have to start upping your schedule on your post.
You know, maybe you could drive a 16 gauge post in good ground, but in this ground, you're never gonna drive light duty posts, which is why when we drive posts, we always start with the SS20 pipe or better. In Florida, we can get away with it a little bit, but here in Wyoming and in tougher conditions, you're just not going to. They'll get stuck on your pounders and you'll end up fighting it the entire time, so it's not a good idea. We've said it multiple times on the videos before, but the most expensive part of your fence is the post, getting the post in the ground, doing it right. So spend a little bit of extra money, spend it on good quality posts. That's where all the money is. You can replace the whole rest of the fence cheaper than you can replace just the posts on a fence. And that's what's holding all the weight. All right. Okay, there's the spot. Let's do it.
For those of you that don't know, that thing easily weighs double one of the other drivers.
Yeah, not to mention you have the bulky cumbersomeness of these hoses. It's a lot more powerful, but there's some drawbacks as far as like mobility. Not to mention we have to have it attached to this. Well, we could have it attached to a walk behind skid steer or a power pack. That's still an extra piece of equipment you're lugging around. So, okay, my hands are getting cold. Let's go.
Here we go.
Hit it.
Ready?
So with this pounder, we were easily able to get this down to 3 feet. Now I think out of curiosity, can we try it again and put that one in there and see if we can put this post in that same hole? What if we landed on just a really big rock and it was just a fluke? I wanna see. So let's pop this off. Here again, this is one of the drawbacks is this thing's heavy. It's not light. This is not for the faint of heart. You wanna have a couple people, because getting it off is, especially if you're working on 6 foot tall fence. We're definitely gonna have to do some jumping jacks today because it's chilly. So now that this thing's in the ground 3 feet, we cannot get that ground. That ground doesn't, that void was there from pounding. We're not making that void any bigger. And that ground is solid. This post is not going anywhere. What would happen if we put a load on this post is it's gonna bend. Just below ground is where the radius of that bend is going to be. If we had concrete in this, the bend is gonna happen right at the top of the concrete. So all we've changed is a little bit where it bends, but this post is definitely gonna bend before that ground ever fails around this post. That's what we're looking for. That's how we know it's strong enough. I can't spin this pipe. Probably if I got a pipe wrench out, I could probably spin this pipe. And maybe if I spun it and pulled up on it, I could probably pull this post out by hand. But that's not what we're worried about. Gravity doesn't work this way. Despite everybody's common misconception that we need to worry about that, it's not something that ever becomes an issue. Especially once you start attaching fabric to it, it's almost impossible to get these things out. You could try and pull this thing out and it's very, very, very difficult. The loads on the fence are always going to be in line or this way. Other things to note about this, I don't have a slug of concrete that's going to cause problems with frost heave. Huge benefits to driving posts as long as your ground is conducive to it. Your ground and your budget, I should say. Okay, you ready?
It's got little frozen raindrops on it. Hold on, I got 4.
And I'll also show you how, even though the top maybe, I don't know, what do we have here? We're already basically in a foot. Even though the top foot is super loose, when we get that thing in here to 3 feet, I bet we can't move it. So we were able to get the 3 feet, and for us in our business, that 3 feet is basically kind of our minimum. We want to see 3 feet. That gets us below the frost line. The frost line most years around here is only about 30 inches. So what you'll see is that now all of a sudden we don't have that ground giving way. I could pull on this thing all I wanted. Let's just go ahead and fill this in so you don't see that. No, that's not the ground failing. That's just the post moving and pushing the ground at the very top where we had that loose hole. We would bend this post before we ever got it to fail. I'm also going to show you another trick. So what you noticed when we drove this post is that it hit a rock and it moved just a little bit. The top's really in the right spot, but now we have a post that's super heavyweight and I'm having a hard time bending it. So how do you fix that? Let me show you. All right, so this is how we straighten our post, because the bottom's really in the right spot, but the top is all bent because it's not plumb. And this is just a prototype that I had laying around. We don't have the right one. Down below in the description, there's gonna be a link to one of these that's collapsible and that you can use to do the same thing. But what it does is it just rests against the bottom, because if we're gonna flex this post, or actually we'll put a little bend in it, we want that to be right at the grade. We wanna plumb this post. This just gives me some extra leverage. This handle should be straight out, and you can add a cheater to this if you need even more leverage, because this 40 weight pipe really doesn't like to bend.
A little more.
For the strength and the weight that I lack, this will help.
Yeah, that's great.
And that is how easy we can straighten that post up. Bada bing, bada boom, it's ready for a fence. But that post is gonna come out of the ground. Look at all that movement. Look at all that flex. I know what you're thinking. That's what you're thinking. Look at that. Look at all that. That's weak. If I had some Crete on it, if that had a good 60, 80 pounds of Crete on it, that would make all the difference. Baloney. If you think that, you're probably in the wrong place. You found the wrong channel. We apologize. Drop a nasty comment and move along. What are we doing now? We're gonna see if we can get 4 out of this now? We stalled out with the other hydraulic pounders. We're gonna put the money on it and see if we can get it deeper. Okay, let's do it, Dan. We'll give her the beans. That's 4. So as you can see, this post now that we have gotten an extra foot on it, it's like solid. Like, you know how we can kind of jiggle it and it's kind of re-solidified a lot of the soil at the top and kind of vibrated all that stuff and packed it as it went down. But we're basically breaking rocks all the way through here. So every time we hit that, it's probably hitting a rock and shattering a rock, and it has to break that rock before I can keep going. But you can see, like, at this point, we are so solid in the ground now that there's no way that we would ever pull this out or even bend it. Yeah, I'm pulling on it with everything I've got now, and it's not hardly even moving. For those of you new to driving, one of the key things is that we're trading the girth and all that soil compaction, we're trading that for depth. So we're just putting more depth in the ground. The same principle is used in bridges and buildings and everything all around you. And people don't realize that a lot of the buildings and structures that you see are built off of the same principles we're using here. So we got 2 feet, no, we got a foot with the gas powered driver.
14 inches.
14 inches. We were able to get 3 feet pretty easily. And then we stalled out, and then we had to go to this. Now, gas powered driver, $3,600. Hydraulic pounder is roughly about the same. The only difference is that you're gonna have to have basically a hydraulic power pack with it, and either that could be a skid steer, a walk-behind skid steer, or a power pack. And that's gonna cost you another $6,000 or on up to power that unit. The nice thing about the hydraulic units are gonna have a lot less maintenance. And all the boards that we see all the time, people are complaining because their engines give out, parts break. With the hydraulic pounders, you're gonna have a lot less maintenance issues. You're gonna have a lot less of the oil and stuff that builds up. Just be careful, because as that mushrooms, you can get stuck on your posts. Now, this driver here, brand new, is about $35,000. And then you have to have the skid steer to go with it. So depending on how much you pay for your skid steer, that could cost you $100,000 plus. So it just depends on what kind of production you need to get, what kind of soil you have, but it's possible to drive in every condition as we've demonstrated here. You just need more firepower as the conditions get worse. We showed you how you can straighten this post once it gets driven. As long as it's in the right spot, we can flex that or bend that post to be where it needs to be. And we're bending it so little, we're not losing any of the strength whatsoever. So we have no issues doing that. And then lastly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you, he was supposed to weld that on the 2 foot mark, but okay, close enough. This is the secret weapon for when you don't want your post to spin. So we're going to go ahead, and while we've got this pounder hooked up, we're going to go ahead and drive that. So what that is that is a little chunk of postmaster that we had left over from cutting things down and making some projects, making our plate mounted posts. And so we have these all over the place, and we're just borrowing something from the ag industry where they've got the flanges on their T-posts. We just add a flange. And so this does 2 things for us. It will keep that post from spinning, and it'll also make it infinitely more difficult to pull out of the ground. So if you're just one of those people like, I don't want to be able to pull it out, this is going to help solve both those problems. You ready?
Yep.
All right, so you can see how hard that was to drive. Dan will come bring us a tape measure and we'll figure out how much we have in the ground. But there's a couple things. So I asked my welding shop to weld that plate on at the 2 foot mark, and they welded on the 1 foot mark. I would suggest doing it about a foot below grade. You're just gonna add extra resistance to the very bottom of the post when you weld it at the very bottom. So I wouldn't really recommend that. We were trying to shoot for a 3 foot drive depth and then have the plate at 2 feet. And then that was a 6-inch piece of post. So the other thing, if you don't have a postmaster, you can use a piece of flat plate. There's tons of different things you can use on the same post to do the same thing. But you can see this is in the ground, and we were basically at the point of refusal even for this driver. It was going to be to the point where we were going to start bending the post if we tried to keep going.
We have 2 foot 6 inches in the ground.
So we got 2.5 feet in the ground. Now let's go ahead and try and pull it and see how much resistance we added. Obviously we could put a pipe wrench on this and try and spin it, and we're never ever going to spin this. You can see how much more he's working. This is 2.5 feet in the ground, and he's really having to work to pull this up. I'm curious of what this plate's gonna look like. He's now stalling out and now needs a cheater bar. So as I mentioned, that's gonna give you a lot more up force resistance. We're gonna break it. Oh no, you're coming. You got this. So this is what I recommend on any post that you're gonna have for a gate. Anything where you don't want it to spin, or you just really want that extra solid. Oh wow, it's pulling up. See how much ground is pulling up now? Yeah, that's what we like to see. That's working.
Driving doesn't work.
Yeah, driving's stupid. You guys are full of so many stupid, terrible ideas. Why don't you just use regular concrete like good fencers? So you can see what we did to that plate. One of the other things that we have is it's going to take a lot more power. It's going to take a lot more firepower to get that in the ground plus the post, because you added a lot more resistance. Just as you added resistance to pull it out, you're adding resistance to be able to pound it in. So take that into mind. Like good clay ground, I'd probably still get that in the ground, but here we would have never got that in the ground probably with a hydraulic pounder or the gas pounder. You're gonna need serious firepower for this type of ground. Florida, we could drive that with our gas powered drivers all day long, as long as we don't run into a tree root. Woo! This one's a little saucy too. Pounding doesn't work. It doesn't work.
It's for losers.
I bet the bottom of this one's freaking mangled.
Oh!
All right, skid steer.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is 4 feet in the ground here. So for all you people that made it to the end of the video before you left your nasty comment about how this doesn't work.
I gotta give it to him though. We put a lot of cheaters on this thing and we've never bent it.
No, you can definitely break it. It is not a challenge to try and break one of those. You're probably wondering, why aren't you giving us a little bit more information about that great big pounder you put on that skid steer? Well, check out this video right over here, and we'll give you a little bit of a history on why we no longer can recommend that equipment and why we don't talk about it. If you want to see somebody drive massive posts, check out this video over here where Rory in Scotland showed us how to drive great big massive posts with his Brysuma driver. If you want to see how we do aluminum fence with no dig that will never spin, check out this video right over here.